Episode 49 this week, the Omega Glory. This one was all over the map. All over the map. Strange episode. Was really good in parts, really bizarre in parts. Things didn't always bridge seamlessly in this episode, but the Enterprise was headed to a planet, and they found the Excelsior. Just sitting there in the orbit. So Kirk's like, I didn't know they needed help. I didn't hear of any problems. So he gets Spock, McCoy, and Lieutenant Galloway, who we hadn't seen before, and they go over to the Excelsior. They find all these uniforms with large piles of salt all around them. So they're trying to figure out where the crew went, where they just took off their uniforms and left. And they determined all the shuttlecraft were there. They couldn't find anyone on board. And finally McCoy said, well, they never left. These piles of salt are the crew. They had all the water evaporated out of them. This is all that's left. Second episode in a row where people turn into big piles of salt. Last episode they were like a big solid pile. This one they were just a loose pile of salt. Couldn't rehydrate them though, they were gone. So the crew goes down to the planet after they see the chief medical officer's log where he warned them, said that they can't go back to their ship, they're dead men. And the only chance of survival's to the planet, so they get down there and they stumble across a guy about to be beheaded apparently. They stop that. And then there's the captain of the Excelsior, Captain Ron Tracy. And he orders the guy that was going to be beheaded to be put in jail. They talk for a minute with the executioner. He goes away. And Spock's like, that's weird that they know about phasers based on your conversation. And Captain Tracy's like, oh yeah, it is weird, huh? Oh. When the Enterprise crew are off by themselves, and they trying to figure out what this infection was, what the illness was, and then Spock's like, oh yeah, we have to arrest the captain of the Excelsior because he broke the Prime Directive, gave him phasers. McCoy's like, you can't arrest him, we're doomed, I tell you. We'll be here for the rest of our lives, and there's only 5 of us. And Spock's like, true, but he still has to be arrested, or maybe have his phaser taken away. And Tracy was like, oh yeah, we'll take this, and he pulls him captive. And he throws Kirk and Spock into the jail, and he orders McCoy to work on the serum to give him immortality because he thinks that the sickness that was on that planet is the key to immortality because all the people that lived on the planet were hundreds, if not thousands of years old. Apparently. So, Kirk's in there, and he's in there with the guy that was going to get beheaded. Their people are called the Yanks. The people that was going to do the beheading, the comms. So, Kirk's in there with a male and a female Yank. They start fighting, and they're fighting and fighting and fighting. Spock's like, hey, we can loosen these bars of the cell and get out of here. And Kirk's like, yeah, they won't let me do it because they'll jump me if I start to do that. So they're fighting and fighting. And then finally Kirk says the word freedom, and the Yank's like, freedom? How do you know that word? And he starts talking to him. Kirk's like, I thought you couldn't talk. He's like, we only talk if you say the one word. Then they try to bust out of there. Once they get the window bars busted out, Kirk's like, okay, Spock will be there in a minute. And then the Yank just nails Kirk in the back of the head with one of the bars, knocks him out. He wakes up, Spock's like, you've been out for 7 hours. And Kirk's thinking to himself, well, why didn't you break the bars if they were that easy to break and get me out of here before 7 hours? But Spock didn't. He just stood there and looked at him for 7 hours while McCoy's working on that serum. And of course, McCoy figures out, hey, it's probably just natural immunization here. It's natural for them to have this because there was a war at one point with bacterial weapons and it got out of hand, and now there's natural immunization, and so it's natural for this species to live that long. It's not transferable. Tracy didn't believe it. He was for words. He killed Galloway at one point, who was already injured from an attack from the Yanks. So he's broken all kinds of laws here. He wants phasers. Kirk, warns the ship in kind of a coded message not to send the phasers down. Tracy's for words. He wanted all those phasers so he could slaughter the Yanks. Apparently he's been doing that. Well, eventually, the Yanks overcome the comms. They grab the Starfleet crew. They take them to the courthouse. And they have these bizarre chants that they're doing. And Kirk's like, that's really familiar. And Spock, who was electrocuted trying to contact the ship earlier, who said he needed medical attention, kept getting better minute by minute despite them saying he needed help right away. And Kirk can't concentrate on what the words are. They bring in the American flag and Kirk's like, oh yeah, I got it. He's like, the Constitution and the Pledge of Allegiance. They're the Yankees and the other guys are communists. It must be a parallel world. All of that got really bizarre. The Yankees were like, well, you must be okay then if you know all of those words. Kirk's like, yeah, you just didn't say them right. Despite speaking perfect English, you couldn't say the words on this document for some reason. It got bizarre. It got really bizarre there at the end. But of course, Sulu and some of the security guards came down. They arrested Tracy. Spock apparently finally got medical attention, but we never see that, despite the fact he seemingly got better as time went on, even though initially they said he had to get to better facilities immediately. And he was walking and talking, he was fine. That was pretty much the episode. It got bizarre. Some interesting notes on this one. The guy that played Captain Tracy in this episode was Dr. Van Geller in a previous episode. He was the scientist who had the machine go wiggy on him and warped his mind. He lost his mind twice in Star Trek, apparently. And Galloway, who was vaporized by the phaser in this one, will be back in a future episode. No explanation given, but he got resurrected. Sulu was back in this one. Sulu was in command of the ship even. Came down in the rescue party. But no Chekhov and no Mr. Scott for the episode. They were not to be seen or heard. No mention of them. But it is also one of the first times we saw a medical officer's log that wasn't McCoy. Medical officer even on the bridge of the ship in the captain's chair giving his medical log. Reasons not totally clear, but you would presume he was the only one left at that point trying to warn people off of the ship. But other than that, that's pretty much the episode.